Good evening, everyone. My name is Dr. Sylvia Greenwood. I'm the Interim Associate Superintendent of Human Resources, and we're so happy to have you here this evening for our third installment of our HR workshops. This one is the topic for this evening is crafting a resume. So I'm so excited that you're here to learn how to do a proper resume so that it can get highlighted and seen by our HR team. At this time, I'm so happy that our HR team has taken the time out this evening to prepare this workshop for everyone. And I'd like to pass it on to our HR recruitment coordinator, Mr. Thomas Scott, so he can review the agenda for this evening.
Good evening. Thank you, Dr. Greenwood. So we're going to open up and welcome everyone. We're going to open up with our do's and don'ts on a resume, and that's going to come from, it'll be a video presentation. It's going to be delivered from our HR directors, Dr. Janet Scott, who's over classified personnel, and Mr. Joanne Eldridge, who's over certificated personnel. Then we're going to go over to what HR and WCCUSD look for in a resume, and that's going to be presented by myself and a video presentation from our Senior Administrative Assistant Confidential, Danielle Cadmus, and Senior Administrative Assistant to Mr. Eldridge, Liz Smith. And then we're going to have a WCCUSD success story presentation that's going to come live from Vice Principal Veranda Booker. She's the Vice Principal at Lincoln Elementary and Ford Elementary. Then we have a chance for some questions and answers, reminders, and then I'll come back with next steps. All right, at this time, we're going to move to our do's and don'ts. And this is just a few of the do's and don'ts that should go on a resume and shouldn't go on a resume that we'll go over tonight.
Good evening. My name is Joanne Eldridge. I'm the Interim Director of Certificated Employees for West Contra Costa Unified School District, and I'll be talking about the resume do's. The first resume do, make sure your resume is clear, readable, and kind to the employer's process. Many of these resumes go through an application tracking system, so we want to make sure your experience is concisely highlighted. Spend most of your space on the most recent roles. There should be like 3 to 4 bullet points on your most recent work, and any older job experience, you should only have 1 or 2 bullet points. The next resume do is use those strong action verbs. We gave you some highlights below, developed, managed, coordinated, any strong action verbs to show exactly what you were doing in your current role or your past role. Another resume do is tailor your resume to the role you're applying for. Remember to highlight the skills that you have, the experience that you have for that particular position. Recruiters want to know how much experience you have and how you can fit into that role. The resume is a great way to share your story of that shows that you're more than qualified for the position that you're seeking. On your resume, make sure that you have headers. Make sure that you include your full name, your email address, any way for us to contact you, whether you have different ways to contact you, LinkedIn, your Google, is it Facebook? Sorry, I messed that one up. Be sure that you have headers included, so that way you can have your full name, your zip code, your email address, phone number, your LinkedIn account, or any other way for us to contact you. We want to make sure that it's very easy and accessible to reach back out to you, so that way that we can call you in for an interview. You guys ready?
Arrgh! Oh my God! Sir, yes, sir! Sir, yes, sir!
Yep.
All right. And the last thing about your resume do's, we would like to keep your resume to a 1 page. We know you have tons of experience and could go on and on, but 1 page is more than sufficient. Again, make sure that you have those headers, education, your experience, any of things that really highlight why you're the best candidate for this position and why you should be called in for an interview.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Dr. Janet Scott, and I'm the Director of Classified Personnel. Here are some resume don'ts. You don't want to add too much information. It's important to organize your resumes in ways that will allow the recruiter or the screener to easily follow the information that you want to have highlighted. So bullet points is an effective way to do that. It allows us to see the critical abilities and skills that you want us to note when screening your application and focus on those skills that make you a good candidate for the job you're applying for. You want to make sure that you don't have spelling mistakes or grammatical errors. Double, triple, quadruple check for errors. Ask a friend or family member or colleague to read through the resume to catch those mistakes. Sometimes overlooking them repeatedly allows you to catch those mistakes. Use spelling and grammatical checks in your word processor or online to make sure that your application is presented in its best light and that your resume doesn't have those kinds of mistakes. Inaccuracies about your qualifications or experience. It's really key that you're paying attention to make sure that you have an honest representation of your abilities. Half-truths, inaccuracies, misleading informations are all resume dumps. Unnecessary personal information. You want to make sure that you focus on your professional skills that make you the best candidate possible. If you feel that that it's important to add any of your life experience, that's something that you would share later when just giving the interviewer a good feel for yourself. But it's not a place to have that information, or it should not be entered on your resume. Information such as your marital status, the number of children you have, or even your age. There are laws that prohibit companies from discriminating against potential employees based on their age. So not including that information is important to be aware of. And the same goes for sexual preference or gender. And so those kinds of items we don't want you to include on your resume because legally those items are things we can't ask about. Too many details about your hobbies and interests. With the increasing focus on work-life balance and the need for downtime, some details of your interests and hobbies are expected and even encouraged. However, hobbies and interests section on your resume is generally optional. So that space is kind of like the most expensive real estate when you're buying a home. So you want to make sure that you don't have too many details on your resume that take up that kind of space. The more professional the experience you have, the less relevant your hobbies are likely to be. Passive language. Your career is not something that just happened to you. So use action words and take credit for making things happen. Employers like to look at applicants as an opportunity to increase their value for their companies. So your resume is the first opportunity to show a potential employer that you would be a good candidate and that you will help their company to grow. So instead of using passive language such as proven results on your resume, you want to talk about exactly what was done and how a difference was made in your career. So instead of saying proven results, talk about the actions that was actually taken. So as a school community outreach worker, you want to talk about how your actions actually led to that result. You want to talk about the fact that you set a goal, 125 contacts each week. Those contacts were either in person, over the phone, or through email communication. Tiny text. So you want to keep your resume to a reasonable length and prioritize the most relevant skills and use bullet points and short statements that keep the word count down. But don't make the mistake of shrinking the text to include more information. You want to ensure that there's little white space on the page to give it more visual appeal. So keep the font equal size throughout the resume. Other don'ts: photographs, company specific jargon, first person language, I, me, or we, or information that you tend not to want to use in your resume. Company specific jargon is a good one. As an educator for over 20 years, a lot of time the jargon is too specific to have notice for the particular job that you're applying for. So make sure that the terminology you use, everyone can understand.
So we've heard a few important do's and don'ts from our directors of HR. So please note that a well-written resume makes it easy for the recruiter or the screener to see what a person can bring to the position that they're applying for. I think this is a well-written resume. I don't know about you guys, but I think it's one. This is a resume I've used, and I've updated it over the few years that I've used since I've been in the district. And this is an in-house resume, is what I call, because it's my district resume. And as you can see, things are in chronological order from the most recent current job to my my first job in the district. And then I've used bullet points, and I've used action words, not passive words, to give details on the job, that the duties that I've done. I believe it's a well-sized written far as font size. And I've used my education and my skills. And I also did some relevant extracurricular experience that I have. So this is just an example of what a resume should look like. It's one page as well. And now we're gonna show a video presentation from on what WCCUSD looks for when we review a resume.
Hi, Sally.
Hi.
I applied for this job, typist clerk 3 for the school district. Can you please look at my resume to see that I do everything okay?
Sure,
All right,
yeah.
thank you.
Yeah, no problem. So let's see. The first thing I'm seeing is that you want to highlight your name versus your address. I see your email and you want to do something a little less personal.
Are you serious? I had this since 2005. I just like that email address.
It might send the wrong message.
Okay, well,
I
I can
just
change
really-
it. I can
yeah.
get a new email address. Okay.
Okay, and so then I'm looking at the summary, and there you want to put objective.
Okay, I can change
Okay.
that.
Okay, so let's see. Hard worker known for keeping it real, seeking a full-time position as a writer. So you told me that you were applying for a typist clerk 3, right?
Yes, I am. Yes.
Okay, so you want to put that, want to just put typist clerk 3.
Okay. Okay.
So it's very clear that that's the position that you're applying for, and that they know that, you know, you've researched it a little bit.
Okay, I can change that.
Yeah, and then you want to take out the keeping it real, because it's casual.
Okay.
Yeah. So let's see. You've got skills. You've got your sense of humor, organized. Okay. Usually skills are you type quickly, or you take notes quickly. You're going to want to make sure that your experience relates to the job that you're applying for. They really like to see that you know what you're applying for and you know what skills are needed.
Okay, that's good to know. So I
Yeah.
will change it. Yes.
Let's see. You're looking at the resume, everything's really tight, a little bit more space, so it's easier to
space here.
read.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
So it's a
Okay.
little easier to read and easier on the eyes. I'm looking over your experience, and I'm noticing that you're starting with your job from 2006. And you want to start with your most current experience first, and then work your way down to the oldest year, because that way they see that first and they know what you've been doing most recently. Want to list experience that's more relevant to being a typist clerk 3. Customer service is definitely a part of it, so that you definitely want to emphasize that. Phone handling, that's the first thing you want to put up in your experience, is how it relates to the job that you're applying for. So the other thing is you're looking for a typist clerk 3 position, and the first thing you listed was Sully's Irish Bar. That was probably a great job, but I'm not sure how that relates to you being a typist clerk 3. You don't really wait tables as a typist clerk 3, or you don't handle cash or do credit card, do things that are a little bit more related to the typist clerk 3 position.
Okay. I can change that.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then how long did you work there?
About 8 months. Yes.
Okay, so you need to be a little bit more specific on your dates, and that means including the months. So that way, the prospective employer has an idea of how long you actually worked at a site rather than guessing.
Okay.
Okay. So I'm looking at the second page, which, just so you know, on a resume, you should not have a second page. Everything that you have experience-wise should be on one page.
Oh, okay. That's very good to know. Okay,
Yeah,
thank you.
so I would tighten that up definitely. And then you have information down here about writing and editing. Again, you're going to need to show how that it relates to being a typist clerk 3 and whether that's relevant information to being a typist clerk 3. The last thing I see is that you listed education as Buffington University. I'm curious to know, because I can't tell whether you graduated.
I started 1 year and stopped.
Oh,
so that's why I have that
Okay, so maybe you don't want to include that then if it's not going to be applicable.
Okay. Gotcha.
Or say that you've been there, have 1 year.
Okay.
Or you might want to, or you should put just your high school education.
Oh, that's right. I didn't think about that. Yes,
Yeah.
yes. My graduation date. Yes. Okay. All right.
Yeah.
I can add that.
And I'd also take out the PSI
Okay.
after the BA in English, because that really sends the wrong message.
All right. Good to know. Yes. Thank you. See, this
Yeah.
is why I have you looking over. Okay.
Yeah. I hope I helped. But I would definitely make those changes, and I think you'll definitely get the job.
All right. Appreciate it. Thank you for taking the time out
Oh, you're
to
very
review
welcome.
it.
Thanks, Danielle and Liz. And now we're going to have our success story from Vice Principal Booker.
Good evening. My name is Miranda Booker, and I'm the new vice principal of Ford and Lincoln Elementary. This is my first year as an administrator. I was formerly a middle school science teacher for the last 18 years, so I'm very excited to move into a leadership position. So a little bit about my story. I have been applying for admin positions for many years, and I was unsuccessful. I wasn't receiving any type of response. I had a couple of calls, but just not what I really wanted. So I was really, discouraged and disappointed, and I was trying to figure out what was going on, why I wasn't getting any calls, any emails. So I decided to reach out to HR. So I was able to get an appointment with Dr. Greenwood. And when I met with her, I would say it like changed my life. So she was able to give me some advice on my resume as well as my cover letter. And she made me understand that my resume was kind of plain and it needed to be changed and updated so that it could be highlighted so that it would stand out amongst others who were applying. So I didn't realize that I was competing against so many people. So she told me that, if I want my resume, my application to stand out, that I have to, make some adjustments to it and to update it. So I did, excuse me, I did make those changes. I changed or added more skills that represented what I was currently doing, skills that aligned to leadership. So for example, I started working with teachers since I have been teaching so long. I was becoming a mentor. So I added that as a skill, teacher mentoring. Also teacher observation and feedback, because I would observe teachers and we would do peer observations, and I gained skills in that. Restorative justice, team building, collaboration. So instead of just saying organization and time management, which are just plain basic skills, I added skills that show leadership. And then I also updated my experience and made that experience more leadership type. So for example, I put IoT member, science department lead, planning and presenting professional development. I was the TUPE person, tobacco use prevention coordinator. I added that as well. And then like even last school year, I was the grading for equity committee lead. And so I added that as well to my resume. And then this past summer, I was the admin intern in summer school at Nystrom. And I immediately added that to my resume so that when I applied for jobs this summer, they could see that I was getting that experience as an admin. And I started getting calls when I put in applications. So the outcome is that I received 2 admin offers, and I decided to go with elementary. I wanted to change from middle school, so I accepted the position for Ford and Lincoln Elementary. And even after I accepted that position, I received calls from a high school, a middle school, and another elementary school, and I had to turn them down because I had already accepted a position. But I was really overwhelmed with, the response from updating my resume and making those changes. So I want to thank Dr. Greenwood and HR for steering me in the right direction and just helping me to make my dream come true, because I had been an aspiring administrator for many years. I would tell my students, I would tell parents, I'm an aspiring administrator. So they knew what I was going for. And it finally happened this past summer. And I think it's because of my resume and also just building up my confidence and interviewing as well. So just a couple of tips. I think I pretty much went over them, but I highlighted experience, I highlighted my skills and made those to align with leadership positions. And then I made my resume stand out by just making a nice, clear design, having a good font that wasn't too big, wasn't too small. And I chose a nice design with a color just to help it stand out a little bit more. So with that being said, I'm going to turn it over to Thomas Scott to finish up the presentation.
Thank you, Ms. Booker, for that. Please take the time to click it, to copy the QR code to fill out the survey for us. And we would also like to open up the floor for any questions that you might have for our HR team. We have members on our team that's here. Dr. Greenwood, Dr. Scott, Mr. Eldridge is here. Danielle Cabot is here. So we will, if you have any questions, this is the time for you to raise your hand or write in the chat, and we will answer any questions before we move to the next segment of this presentation. All right.
I'd like to acknowledge our trustee Smith Foles, if she would like to have any words at this time.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Dr. Greenwood. Thank you, Dr. Scott. As always, you guys do a wonderful job. I learned some things tonight that I did not know, so I'm very appreciative. I took some screenshots because I think this should be shared with our students. Our students need to learn how to write a good resume. So I appreciate all the space to learn, and I hope anyone on here go spruce up that resume and come work for WCCUSD. I'm not gonna lie to you, be special, but come work for us. We need you. Thank you, Dr. Greenwood. Thank you, Dr. Scott. Thank you, Mr. Scott. I appreciate everyone. Thank you, Mr. Eldridge. Have a good night, y'all.
And Trustee Smith Foles, this presentation will be on the district website.
Oh, perfect. I'll make sure that I let the leadership teachers know so they can share it with their seniors and juniors at the high schools. Thank you.
Thank you. And I think we have more questions.
Hey, Thomas, we have a question from Lydia Trujillo. Hey, can you give any interview tips?
Well, that's going to be our next workshop in January, and we'll be talking about that. Any more questions?
Yes, we have a question from Mr. Jose Jimenez. You can write it in the chat, or you can come off mute and ask us.
Yes, thank you. I just had a question, in like a personal question, I guess. I seen the experience part with Rhonda Booker. The jump she made, but she was in education and Scott and everybody. So mine's is like a totally different field. So maybe some insight or words of encouragement. Like, I've been in transportation since out of high school for about 15 years, and then I just want to get into education. I feel like my experience really doesn't go into like counseling and stuff. I got my bachelor's and everything, but I just don't have experience. So kindly, if somebody could talk a little bit about that.
Well, I can share at the end of the presentation, we're going to share some more details, but I can just tell you right here, that's when we write your cover letter. When you're applying for a job, it's very important that you introduce yourself in your cover letter, your introduction letter, and you can explain those type of things in your cover letter when you submit in your resume. And a person of like you coming to us, your cover letter would have to come with that resume when you're applying for those type of jobs, but we can understand your background.
Thank you.
Okay, so we have Catherine Swift has raised her hand. Catherine, you can either go off mute or you can type in the chat your questions.
Actually, it's not a question. I just wanted to thank Ms. Booker for sharing your personal experience with how brushing up your resume really helped you get the job that you want. I really appreciated that.
It's my pleasure. Thank you.
And Jose, just to let you know, I heard what you said. There's other skills. Your skills, it's plenty of positions within a district. You said counseling, but there's a whole lot of positions in the district that I'm pretty sure your skills can be used. So we'll talk.
Appreciate that.
Are there any other questions that you might have or comments that you want to give at this time? We have our wonderful HR team here to answer any questions. If not, we're going to move to the next slide. So if you would like to have your resume reviewed, you can email it to tscott@wccusd.net. From this day until the end of January, we will review your resume and give you feedback. So you have until starting today until the end of January, and someone from our HR team will review and give you feedback, just as Dr. Greenwood did for Ms. Booker. We will do the same for you, and that's what we're here for. We're here to help. So that's what we would like to offer to you for participating or even looking at this video. So we're going to extend that offer into the end of January. So you can email them to me at tscott@wccusd.net.
Okay, we have some more great questions that are coming in. So the first question to the HR team is the resume review only if you're applying to jobs at WCCUSD?
No, we'll be nice. We would like for you to come and apply for here, but you're on this call, and so we'll review and give feedback.
Thank you. And then the next question we have is, should references be listed on the resume or be included elsewhere?
You don't put your reference on the resume unless they ask for it. Because like for our school district, our school district, we have a spot on Edge on when we ask for your resumes.
That's right. I had not a problem. It's kind of difficult getting the font I had on my resume. You know how you only have so many gigabytes or so much space on the adjoin application. You have to shrink the pages down or it won't take it as one of your attachments. You know what I mean? So I kind of had to change my, I had to shrink down the size of the resume so that the page could fit onto the adjoin application, because you have to add the resume as attachments. And
right.
resume is too many pages. I need to shorten it. But it's still, you have to shrink it down for it to fit.
So you have to, well, we can talk about that. You can email me, and I just wrote your name down. I can take a look. You have an application on file already?
Oh, yes, I did.
Okay, I can look you up and take a look at it. But you can email me your resume and we can take a look at it. But I think that might be a technical problem with EdJoint, and we can see what they made you do.
Yeah, it's with everything. Even if you have to save a certificate, your license, it's just so much space that it takes. So you have to, like I said, you have to shrink it down. So which then changes the font. So, but I'll you said email you?
Well, if you wanted to take a look at your resume, but I wrote your name down so I can take a look and see how your documents look on EdJoint.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
No problem. Thank you for bringing that to our attention. So we'll move to the next slide. Well, I want to say thank you for coming out to our resume writing workshop. And I want to wish everyone a happy holidays or winter days. And at this time, I'll turn it back over to Dr. Greenwood.
I just want to thank everyone again for taking the time out this evening for attending our workshop. We will have one in January, which will, as Mr. Scott said, we'll review interview tips and skills. And again, please scan the QR code because your feedback to us is crucial on how we do on these workshops. So we take it seriously. So please scan the QR code and give us feedback. And again, have a happy holidays. And thank you again for coming out. We appreciate your time. Good evening.